Welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your hosts, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
And we're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. This is episode 210. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, my friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, I was here at 11 last week, but you wouldn't let me in. I think you were trying to hide from the listeners that I caught the whale on the fishing trip. I caught the whale, and we didn't even have to measure this whale, Ryan. Everyone knew this was going to win the day. So just want to let our listeners know you sabotaged my appearance last week to prevent that from coming out.
Well, let me help you out. If you were here at 11, the show ends at 11. So that's why we go from 10 to 11. So if you're here at 11, then that's what you said. Then you were just late. You're just late. So you just came in late. I can't help it if you show up late for work.
I was here till 11. Till 11.
Oh man, yeah. Josh did catch the megalodon. There was no doubt about it. I think I put pictures. I don't know if I put the picture of the megalodon up or not. We destroyed them, and thanks to Reed Goodman, he finally paid off his bet from over a year ago, or about a year ago. So it takes him a while to pay, but he's good for it eventually. That's what you said about Reed. He's eventually good for what he said. So no, it was good for Reed, good for us to go, and thanks to Reed for footing the bill on a lost bet. And so we had a blast. And if anyone wants to know who we use or whatever when we go down there, hit me up. I'll be happy to send you the skip's name that we use. It was insane, man. It was insane. Like I think about it almost every day. We caught so many fish. So for those of you, we'll do a quick fishing diatribe here. For those of you who've been like perch fishing or brim fishing, where you're just dropping the pole in the water and you're catching fish, like, okay, we're not fishing like that, but when that fishing's good, this is what that was, especially that second day, early that morning. We're just throwing in the water, catching trout left and right. I mean, we must have caught, we're going to keep 20, but we probably caught 40, 50 trout that morning.
Yeah, we caught our limit within about 45 minutes. I remember at one point it was like, do we want to just keep fishing and just catching and throwing them back because we already caught our limit after like 45 minutes, or do we want to go try to search for the
the video that we recorded, I think it was like at 7:32, and so we were limited out by like 7:35, 7:34, something like that. It was like that early in the morning. I'd caught my 5 by like 7:15, 7:14. Obviously, for those of you who are wondering, I caught the most fish because obvious reasons. And I had the big fish of the day. This is what frustrates me. I had the big fish of the day the first day. The bet was most total fish that you keep and big fish, total big fish. I had the big fish of the day. Nice fish, 25 inches, redfish. And then Josh lands this megalodon in the last hour of the first day, and no one ever came close to that thing. Oh my gracious, it was ridiculous. To be fair, you also probably had the biggest shark on, but like it never came close to being landed. We never close to landing that thing, but that thing, it was funny. Josh, you were in the boat throwing towards the bank, and Josh was like, I think it's off. I don't know who it was. Like, no, it's swimming towards us. The next thing, you see the line go past the boat, and you just hear zzz. It was pulling.
It brought flashbacks from the movie Jaws, where it kicks off those things. I was, my thoughts were, we need a bigger boat. We're going to pull this thing in.
It was a huge fish. Well, a huge shark at least. So, but no, we had a good time. And if anyone else wants to take us fishing, I think we're up for it, right?
Yeah, we'll do it. No obligation. Just fishing trips.
Yeah, we're game fishing. We do a little hunting. So if you think how do I pay back Josh and Ryan for all they've done for me, then that's one way to start is fishing trips. We are easy in that regard, and so it's it was good, man. It was good. It's one of those things where you go that trip was probably we caught so it was 32 fish you catch a day. We caught 32 fish each day. Just absolutely slaughtered them, and probably will never go back and have fishing like that again. It'd be hard to duplicate. I'll put it like that. But if someone wants to try, if someone says, you know what, hey, I want to try and figure out what's going on, how do we get this? Then let us know. We'll be more than happy to take it. So, but yeah, Josh, it's good for you to be back. Good for you to be here. And oil prices are sitting right now at 73 WTI, 75 Brent, which reminds me that at the end of this episode, I have a podcast called Inside the War Room. That's Inside the War Room. And I had the good Dr. Anas Al-Haji on talking about a lot of stuff oil and gas. I will play a clip. It's about 8 minutes. Him talking about inflation and how that connects to oil prices. So you can catch the first part of that interview right there at the end of this podcast. So stay tuned for that. And then you can go listen to the full podcast at Inside the War Room. I'll link to that in the show notes. But Josh, we have a couple guests on today. So let's get to our first one. If you're on, put him up here on the big screen. Let's see here. There we go. If you're on the Twitter sphere, you might know him as Landman Life at Landman Life or landmanlife.com. It is good to have you on. I think we can officially say that your first name is Gates, right? That's as far as we can go for legal reasons.
I am Gates Mueller. And for the past, I guess, 10 and a half, 11 years, I have been the name on the internet known as Landman Life.
Wow, coming out with the big dogs. And just folks, I don't know if we got it or not. I feel like we got some of the original Landman Life swag a few years ago back. So still got that, still use that. So it's good to have you on. This is a 30-second background here. On Twitter, there is a hashtag EFT. There's kind of a group of people who are oil and gas professionals. And I kind of watch the EFT crowd from afar. I'm not really in the group. I know some of the people in the group, but it's kind of watch your account and several others. And I saw this weekend that you were frustrated that you had gotten a cease and desist letter because part of what you have is you have a swag shop where you sell, where you sell kind of parody merchandise for oil and gas companies. And it's kind of poking fun at shell companies in the industry and whatever. And after the Texas freeze, you expanded that to ERCOT. And so as you can see here, if you're watching the video, but those who aren't, you've got a hat that says BRCOT, BRRCOT. And apparently ERCOT reached out and said, no moss with the BRCOT. What happened, man?
So there's a little more background to the story on that. It was February 16th when I first started selling the BRCOT designed merchandise. We were sitting at home, couldn't leave the house because all the streets were frozen. Most people were out of power, out of water. I sat there on my computer and started working on something, and I've got a creative team, as I like to call them, a group of about 10 to 15 individuals who I bounce ideas off of, things like that, to hone in on refining the designs before I post anything up for sale in the store. Somebody on the creative team reached out to me and said, hey, you should do something with BRCOT. And I thought that was a pretty good suggestion. So I started working on that. And once it went up for sale, Chuck Yates was in the process of trolling ERCOT on Twitter. He was taking the page where they had posted all of the board members' names and qualifications and things like that, and individually addressing each board member on his own Twitter account saying, this person is from Michigan. I'm sure they know a lot about how Texas works, things like that. When he saw that I had posted the BRCOT merchandise, he immediately sent me a text message and said, hey, I want you to send some of this stuff to every single one of these board members, and I will pay for it. Send me the bill, and I will finance this project. So Chuck and I, we've kind of been friends for a while now, and I know that he's kind of a goofy guy. So I had to make sure that he was being serious about this at first. And then once I actually started working on that, it got a lot harder because ERCOT took their webpage down that showed a list of all of the board members because they were catching so much flack in the media and online about having all of these people who are being paid quite a lot of money to regulate the energy grid in the state of Texas, when they are not actual Texans. Some of them, I don't know if they've ever even been to Texas, to be honest. We had Canadian companies, people from Michigan, California, all over the place. So when they took that page down, I had to use the Wayback Machine to find the archive of all of the board members. And I believe we ended up sending, it was a Burkott coffee mug, a Burkott face mask, and a Burkott sticker to 21 of the then current or past board members. A few days after that happened was when they evidently had all of the out-of-state board members resign. So once they started receiving all of these packages, we had 2 of them that actually got returned. We heard back from one of the board members who actually said it was a great looking coffee mug. And I just figured that was the end of it.
Right.
Saturday morning, I got to the office. I was putting together a bunch of packages.
This Saturday. Okay, we're fast forwarding
Yes.
to this Saturday morning now.
Yeah.
And how long between the time you sent the swag to this 2 days ago?
We sent the swag in late February.
Okay, so it's been out there. It's been out there for a while. It took you a little while to find
Right.
it, but it still was. It's been out there for a few months now.
And to be honest, I totally forgot that I even had any of this stuff on the site because I haven't sold any Burkott merchandise for months now.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a pressing issue, and I am currently working on a new design for the summer blackouts that we're about to start experiencing across the state. So when I got that letter Saturday morning, I was pretty surprised. I honestly thought it was a joke at first. When I read through it, I sent you guys the letter, so I know that y'all have read through it as well. But basically, they're trying to say that Landman Life using Burkott is tarnishing their image.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dissect that real quick. So a couple things. We did get a copy of the letter that you said, so we reviewed that, and the disclosure on the Texas Oil and Gas podcast side is we're trying to dissect what's going on here, because for us it's a little frustrating that that ERCOT let this happen. We've talked about this, we've had people on about this, and so we're pretty frustrated with this. Kind of Josh and I talked about this before you came on offline. And the frustrating thing for me is they said you can't use the term Burkott, which is BRRCOT. I don't know how they can claim that. That seems tough. Using their logo, I could understand them saying that. I don't know about parody enough to know what you can and can't do there. I do think I had to hear more and think through it a little bit more. It's kind of all fresh and happening. But the Burkott, like, you can't say Burkott. Like, I don't know how they could claim that, especially with like Saturday Night Live and all the parody stuff that we've seen over the years. So the logo, I maybe there's a case. I have no idea. I'm not a lawyer, but the fact that they said you can't say Burkott, so everyone's clear. It's 2 things. It's not just the logo. It's the BRRCOT. To me, that's preposterous.
So for a government-funded agency to be paying to employ a intellectual property law firm to contact us for this was a little outrageous to me. So the first thing that I did, I forwarded that letter over to our attorneys, and our attorneys at Holmes Law PLLC in Houston. I heard you and Ben talking about Rocket Lawyer earlier.
Yeah.
If you
use it for this.
ever need to actually have a real attorney, call up Holmes Law. They'll take care of you guys. I sent that over to Tommy Holmes, who's the principal attorney there. And his response was, screw that, screw them, go ahead and keep it up. He happened to be at a function with quite a few of the larger names in the Texas Republican Party. And he started sharing with some of those people the letter. And everybody got a good laugh out of that, because ERCOT is not a commercial company. they cannot claim that I have actually done commercial damages that would prevent them from doing business. So the cases that they're citing in this letter actually have no application for a government-run agency.
Mm-hmm. So
they're funded based off of a surcharge on all of our electric bills.
Right. So let me ask you this, because play devil's advocate here. Whether it's ERCOT or some of the other stuff you have on the website, and I don't have a full roster in front of me. I had it pulled up, but I closed it out. On some level, it seems like you're trying to accomplish maybe 2 or 3 things. One, first off, you're trying to sell swag, and good on you for that. Okay, like I told you the other day, I got to start a swag shop. I'm a little jealous of you because it seems like that's been pretty successful. So good on you for that. 2, you're trying to poke fun at things that either maybe you're frustrated, maybe you're not, you just find them funny. But you are kind of you're playing the not the villain's right word, but you're poking at stuff, right? So are you surprised that it's taken so long to kind of get pushback from some corporate entity, whether they're government regulated or not? Because you are kind of poking the bear on some level.
I am not surprised. We've gotten demand letters about stuff in the past. I was surprised that it came from ERCOT.
Okay, I got you. So this isn't the first time you've had it. This is the first time it came from a public entity.
I have learned a lot more about copyright and trademark law than I had ever intended to.
Okay, so you've gotten a cease and desist letter, which essentially means you should take down all the stuff off your store. If someone like myself happened to log on the website this weekend and buy some of that stuff, obviously, and it got shipped to me because I was charged for it, and I was displayed on my laptop was like a sticker, obviously that's one thing. But what do you do moving forward? Like, do you continue to fight this legally? Like, what's next for people who are, because there is a sense in which kind of lampooning things and taking them to task without writing a dissertation is a way that the common guy can do stuff, right? You can kind of make fun of ERCOT by calling him Burcott, and we all get it. We all get the joke. We froze to death, some of us literally, but we froze to death figuratively for days on end across the state of Texas. And so the fact that we want to take them to task, this is one of the ways that we do it. So how do you proceed moving forward? Do you have to take it down? Can you continue? What are your options? And to give us the full disclosure, but where can people follow you to understand or to follow the story moving forward?
You can follow Landman Life on pretty much all social medias. We've got an account on Facebook, Twitter. Of course, we've got the webpage, landmanlife.com. I've been in touch with our legal counsel, and the next move is for ERCOT because we're not taking anything down. And if they really want to move forward, that's fine. We'll go straight to the press, and we'll see if they really want to continue to drag their own name through the mud.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, God, they don't have good publicity right now. And so it's a weird time to fight this battle, especially if we do have summer blackouts. And ERCOT is the culprit once again. Boy, it is a bad time from a PR standpoint. It's one of those times where sometimes in life you just got to take the L. You just got to take the L. Even if the other guy's wrong, you still got to take the L because it's something else. And it's like Josh on this podcast, not showing up for work last week and trying to work around it. He's got to take the L. Josh, you got to take the L, man. You weren't here last week. But I don't care what kind of fish you caught. You got to take the L. But you got to take the L. And so I think ERCOT is welcome to come on this podcast if they want to. And we'll be following this story. It's obviously it's not something we cover this kind of stuff on the podcast regularly, but it was something that it's like, okay, this is a really weird thing that's happening here, that they are focused on this when in 2 weeks ago they're telling us to run our temperatures at 82. And I get it. I get ERCOT's like, well, we've got different departments. I get all that. I get it. It's just still a weird time. So anyways, we'll give you the last word. Tell people where they can find you and anything else you want to say. You got a podcast as well, so plug that too.
Landmanlife.com. We are in the process of launching our first 2 podcasts, hopefully sometime next week. For sure, by mid-July, we'll have a couple episodes out for you guys. We've got a great group of people helping us out. We're headed in some new directions, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. This has been short notice, and we're trying to get the schedule worked out. And so we'll be following along, and maybe when this is get some resolution or whatever, get you back on to kind of follow up to see what happened. So appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
What do you think, Joshua? You think they're going to win?
I'd be a little nervous about going up against ERCOT.
ERCOT? You scared the big boy?
Anybody that's government, man, I just think
man.
FBI, Fed, CIA.
Well, listen, you start getting them 3 letters, I ain't want none of that. 4 or 5 letter agency, that's fine. But 3 letters, FBI, NSA, CIA, I'm scared of those guys. I don't want to get the McAfee or the Epstein treatment. I don't want none of that. Okay. Let's see here. I think our next guest is here and ready. There he is. Let's bring you up to the big screen. How's it going today, sir?
Pretty good. It's a little hot in my apartment. The AC's been out the entire month of June. And
no.
It's a little toasty in here, I gotta say.
No. Well, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are and who you're with for the audience, and so we'll get into it.
Yes. So my name is William Villalobos. I'm a senior petroleum engineering student here at Texas A&M University. The main purpose of why I'm here is to talk about my conference that I hosted in April with the Texas Railroad Commission. The title of the conference is Oil and Gas Health, Safety, and Environment Summit from the perspective of academia, regulatory, and industry representatives. And the main topics that we talked about was hydraulic fracturing, well control, flaring, and carbon-related issues. And it's been quite a road. It's a lot of opportunities, a lot of discussion, especially in regards to the carbon relations ultimately with the public. And it's pretty interesting, depending on which perspective you take.
Okay, so let's talk about the conference. You said you're a senior, that's correct, at A&M?
Yes, sir, here at College Station.
So just for those who are listening, and we have people that reach out from time to time and say, I'm thinking about going into the industry or going back to get a degree, the job market, what's it like? So give us maybe a high level, what you're hearing about potential jobs as you get ready to graduate.
Man, at the beginning of the pandemic, kind of interesting why I'm starting with that time frame, is because I've had friends they had their internships redacted simply because of the market crash. I remember the price of oil going like negative something. And like even Noble Energy like shut me out. So but anyways, it's looking a lot better now. I'm mainly taking the last of my class and studying for my board exam. I want to get my professional engineering's license. And for my friends that don't have internships already, they've got some this summer, and so it's looking good for us.
Okay, so let's talk about the conference. You mentioned y'all covered a wide array of topics. What was maybe some of the big takeaways that you had from it?
The big takeaways, something that I didn't know is regarding well control. I've heard of frac hits and frac bashings, and according to Larry Nixon, who's had 40 years of experience in well control, he was talking about how drilling blowouts is not the case anymore, or like the case of blowouts. They tend to be more of frac hits or frac bashings, whichever term you prefer. And it's more of a financial and legal issue as well, because that frac hit necessarily doesn't communicate to your own well. It can communicate to somebody else's. And that's where, again, it's not only a financial and legal aspect to look into for this. And outside of the well control situation there, the Texas Railroad Commission was very adamant of flaring emissions reduction, and nothing really about a carbon tax or anything like that. So I guess that's good. And regarding hydraulic fracturing, everything's fine. We just simply laid down some baselines for the public to be informed about. And so I would say those are the main key takeaways. I would love to elaborate more on the well control stuff.
You mentioned the carbon capture was a pretty interesting topic that y'all covered there, Will. I know that you mentioned there wasn't any carbon tax. There have been companies that are claiming to be neutral, carbon neutral. What were the discussions like around the carbon? Like, what are the main? I know you mentioned flaring, but what are the main angles that the Railroad Commission are planning to take with regard to carbon?
Essentially, regulation towards reducing the amount of carbon emissions or fugitive emissions that the industry commits, and increasing outside from the industry and academic perspective is researching other ways of how to essentially recycle some of the carbons that we produce, such as like injecting them into the reservoirs for EOR applications, enhanced oil recovery.
Yeah.
But an industry from the academic perspective, Dr. Hill, who's also works with the Railroad Commission, his perspective was very pessimistic because the effectiveness of essentially trying to make this economical and the volumes of CO2 that we would have to recycle is it's simply just not financially worthy. But compared to what like API, the American Petroleum Institute, I should probably mention who all was there first real fast. So Dr. Hassan, which was from the Ocean Energy Safety, he was a moderator. Commissioner Christy Craddock, she listened in towards the ending portion and gave a speech about what the Texas Railroad Commission is wanting to do. Dr. Hill, he works here at the Hall Advanced Department of Petroleum Engineering. Mr. Backlund, who was the HSC director, or who is the HSC director for Helmerich and Payne International Drilling Company. Emily Haig from the American Petroleum Institute, and Larry Nixon from CUD Well Control. Back to the carbon discussion. Yeah, Dr. Hill was essentially elaborating about how it's going to take some time to develop some of these technologies regarding CO2. And from the industry perspective, is that they're pushing more initiatives to how to actually improve that technology, how to implement it into their reservoirs, et cetera. And so, it's at least it's in the discussion portion. I would need to see more proof of its implementation. For some reason, I'm thinking about my research actually with Marathon Oil that I had 2 years ago. That was essentially looking for an alternative other than CO2. We were using a combination of C1 and C2, which is methane and ethane, which ultimately resulted in relatively close results of EOR applications when compared to carbon dioxide, CO2. So at least they're poking around to see what is best. That's another thing I feel like mentioning.
Yeah. So what are the, if you have, government looking to regulate and then the free market is trying to figure out how to navigate, what was kind of the balance between what the private industry was thinking versus what some of the regulators were talking about?
Yeah, industry is definitely pushing, at least everybody that was there was definitely pushing towards being in the favor of what the regulators want, which is less CO2 emissions. And their ways was to see in different ways of how to implement that or how to reduce it. And that's the very basis of it. So if I was to put it in percentages, like 70-80% from the industry of implementation, and then and more in the background is what the Railroad Commission wants is the potential policy that they're going to put forth. Because I think that's kind of the thing to foreshadow, because last thing industry wants, I would consider, is more regulations towards this.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the frac hits. You said you had some more on that. What was that?
The frac hits. So the baseline of a frac hit is essentially when you're doing hydraulic fracturing operations and you accidentally, I never heard of purposeful issues of this, but accidentally communicate towards another well and cause an underground blow or surface fluids to go out the surface of another well. Some dilemma that I heard as well is sometimes these frac hits essentially kill somebody else's well. And that's where the legal issue comes in. Like, who covers this from an insurance perspective as well? That's like a tug of war, like who has to essentially compensate who for this.
I got a question for you. So one of the things that's happening out in New Mexico when they were doing these water injections, or they had saltwater disposal wells, I'm wondering about the injections with CO2 and sort of there was seismic activity that was happening around these areas. Is that anything that was discussed by the Railroad Commission? Is that an issue on the Texas side, or is it something that they're not as concerned about?
So from the Railroad Commission perspective, I know if that didn't exist, they wouldn't have regulations for it. So it definitely does exist. Let's put that out there. If it was my question towards that seismic activity due to overpressurization of disposal wells is usually when they're near a fault line, is if it's regularly enforced and why are they still occurring? And the big debate that was in the summit is, okay, you have these artificially induced earthquakes. It's kind of like, well, they're not causing any sort of structural damage. And so, I mean, these earthquakes, even though they're artificially induced, it's a insignificant concern simply because they don't cause any structural damage. I kind of, whichever perspective, it kind of seems like a wrong place for your head to be for that one. But I'm simply because I guess what perspective you take. But from a public perspective, nobody wants to live with seismic activity or an earthquake or tremor, whatever you want to call it. And so, from my perspective and for the interest of the public, as a incoming engineer, I think there needs to be more enforcement towards that. And it's the main examples that you can see of this is in Oklahoma, simply because they have I forgot what the basin is, but yeah, you can find multiple case studies of seismic induced or artificially induced earthquakes in that region. And so if you can actually Google, Dr. Hill actually worked on this TextNet seismic, you can Google that, and you can see all the seismic activities, even in magnitudes, for the state of Texas. And what was most interesting is where we do the majority of our disposal wells. And just to cover this part as well, usually disposal wells, from my understanding, is that they're usually depleted reservoirs, and because they're no longer economically viable for oil production, we just simply convert them to essentially big trash cans, industrial trash cans.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about the organization for those who aren't familiar. I know we have some Aggies that probably listen, but what you guys have going on, where people can find out more about what you guys are doing, and do you have more events like this coming up in the future?
So I did this event with the International Association of General Contractors, the Texas A&M student chapter. An upcoming event I'm considering of hosting is with the World Petroleum Council. We're looking to start a student chapter here at Texas A&M. I guess me as head organizer of it. And I think frac hits is a discussion we're looking to take on, because it's more of a modern issue as well, because we didn't used to, we don't frac conventional wells. There's no need to. And so with these unconventional wells that we're doing, there's a higher likelihood of this occurrence, and hence why the well control guys, it's no longer a drilling blowout that they're having to look out for, advise people for. It's these completion operations that can have a misfortune everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you have a website or a Facebook group or something for people to follow along at?
I would just Google my name, William Villalobos TAMU, and usually you'll see articles and interviews that I've had where you can find all the different links that I usually mention. So okay. William Villalobos TAMU.
All right, so we will just put that in the show notes for folks who are looking. And the final thing is, like I said earlier, kind of go back to the student thing. For folks who are considering maybe going to school, to kind of doing what you're doing, what would you recommend? Maybe what are bits of the harder things that you've had to do in school?
Well, I think outside of the academia, A&M is another level, and it's a good thing that it's another level because it makes us feel more professional. And so outside of that, though, I think joining a professional organization such as IEDC or like SPE or ADE or whichever, even outside of petroleum engineering, Texas A&M is a great school for engineering overall. But from that, I think when you join these professional orgs, not only do you potentially get sponsored to go to like Italy or something, that's where I got sponsored to go. They introduce you to these different topics and people of like-mindedness. And I think that's a great way to professionally develop yourself if that's what you want. There's other organizations if you have other interests, but it depends on who you are and what you want.
All right. Well, listen, best luck to you guys in the future. We'll link to this in the show notes. And if you have events or whatever, feel free to email it to us and we'll try to mention it on the podcast. I know we try to get you on here for quite some time, so it's good to finally get you on and speak with you. And hopefully get the AC fixed, man.
Dude, yeah.
Dude, it's 100 degrees.
Yeah. I'm liking
my man.
I'm liking pool clothes over here.
Yes, I noticed you when you were back screen. You had the tank top. I thought, well, sun's out, guns out. This dude's not like that. But now I see you just hot, so it's sweating. Okay, all right, brother. Well, listen, thank you so much, and best of luck to you and all the stuff you got going on down there, man.
Thanks, all right, I appreciate it. Have a good one. Take care.
All right, Mr. Shelton. We got a roundup today.
Yeah, we got a couple things we can hit real quick. So oil prices near 2018 highs ahead of OPEC meeting. So this article was released on the 28th. That would be today at 4:10 a.m. this morning. So I guess a OPEC meeting is on the horizon, and it looks like oil prices are doing pretty well.
Yep.
I believe they crossed 70 when we were fishing. I believe it was 69 when we started and 70 when we finished. So if you want to see oil prices go up, take me fishing, and we will get those numbers up. These are just rookie numbers. Just all right, and then two more. Ryan, Texas upstream oil and gas sector continues to add jobs, and then so that's just an article just talking about the job market. There's a couple of another article I saw about Midland market unemployment rates were dropping. So interesting reads out there today. And then there was one more, I believe Enterprise. I don't even have the article pulled up right now. Let me see if I can go back to it. Enterprise, Magellan, and ICE to launch a new futures contract. So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. If you want to take a look just to get up to speed on what's going on there, take a look at that.
Awesome. Okay. And also at the end, just stay on because we'll have that 8-minute clip from Anas from inside the war room. And with that, keep climbing.